right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's beautiful to communicate with you from this multimedia device. My name is Jeff Tamadi, reporting live from CJC Market. You're welcome to our daily analysis for today. Let's see what the market has for us for today. So we'll quickly start on with our fundamental analysis. Don't forget, today is Tuesday, February 22, 2022. So don't forget that. So we move down to our fundamental analysis and see what the market has for us for today. All right, let's kick off. By 12 a.m. this morning, 12 a.m. this midnight, we're able to look out for the consumer price index based on the Bank of Japan. Now, this news is a low impact news. Like I said, a low impact news are not always low in terms of volatility in the market. This particular news now is very important because it has to do with the food and energy price account about the quarter of the consumer price index. In a nutshell, it has to do with the change of prices of goods and services purchased by the consumers, excluding food and energy. Now, when we are talking about food, we are talking about commodities, sugar, maize, avocado, pear, and all that. And when you're talking about energy, you're talking about gas. So this particular news has to do with the food and energy price. So if there will be any change of both the price of goods and services purchased by the consumers, then if the actual is greater than the forecast, that's to say it is good for that particular currency. So that is why we have to give our attention to this particular news if we actually traded this news at that particular point in time, which is 12 a.m. this morning. 2 a.m. this morning, we were able to look at the public sector net borrowing, which has to do with the difference between the value spending and the income for public corporation, which has to do with the central government, the local government during the previous month. So this is not all about what the market has done presently on this particular news, which is the public sector net borrowing. This has to do with the previous record of both the central government as a whole and the local government in details. So that is why this particular news on the British pounds, which is around 2 a.m. this morning, was able to move the market in terms of volatility. 4 a.m. this morning, we were able to look at the information that based on the business climate, which has to do with the euro. Now, the reason this particular news is a medium impact news, that's to say it has more influence in the market more than the low impact news. That is why we have to give attention to medium impact news, especially on euro. This is because this has to do with the economic health business, looking at the market condition on euro, which has to do with changing in sentiment, which signals the future economic activities such as spending, hiring, and investing into the economy. So that is why they need to do this particular survey of about 9,000 businesses, which has to do with the interest rates of the current business condition and expectation for the next 6 months. So if the actual is greater than the forecast on this particular news, that's to say it is good for euro. The reason why we need to pay attention, close attention to this particular news is because it has to do with the survey of over 9,000 businesses. So imagine what influence it will affect the market in terms of volatility, providing liquidity in order for us to make profits in the market. So that is what the euro has. That is what the euro has for us at 4 a.m. this morning. That has to do with the German business climate. 5 a.m. this morning, 5:45 a.m. this morning, we have to look at the news, a low impact news that has to do with the British pounds. If the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. By 6 a.m. this morning, we look at the British pounds again, which has to do with the industrial expectations. If the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. 9 a.m. this morning, we are able to look at the National Bank of Belgium, which is the MBP, Business Confidence Cost Synthetic Curves. Now, this particular news that came out 9 a.m. this morning on you has to do with the survey of about 3,000 businesses which are currently going on businesses now, looking at the condition and expectation for the next 3 months if they are going to reduce or increase the interest rate. Now, this particular news is a very this particular news has to do, okay. Okay, to be sure that you are following us, someone said that he can't see my screen. If you can see my screen, please type 111 in the comment section to be sure that you are following up. If you can see my screen, please type 111 to the comment section to be sure that you are following up. Okay, thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Okay. Okay, nice. So let's go back to where we stopped. 9 a.m. this morning, we were able to look at euro that has to do with the survey about 3,000 businesses who ought to look at the current business conditions and the expectation for the next 3 months. So this particular news has to do with what you should look out for in the future when it comes to the survey about businesses on EU. So this particular news has to do with the economic health conditions, which signals the future economic activity based on spending, hiring, and investments. So that is why we need to give attention to this particular news. So if the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. So on 9 a.m. same too, we looked at the USD dollar. We have a low impact news on USD dollar that has to do with the housing price index. If the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. On that same 9 a.m., we have to look at the X&P, which has to do with the Standard and Poor living apartment, which has to do with the house price index, HPI. Now, this particular news has to do greatly on the real estate dealers. Now, this is the change in price of both selling houses or homes to both the single family and the whole family. So that is why we have to give attention to this particular news, because it has to do with the real estate plan on the USD dollar. 9:45 a.m. this morning, we're able to look at the USD again on a medium impact news. Now, this particular medium impact, it has to do with the flash manufacturing, which also known as the Purchasing Managers Index. Now, this particular Purchasing Managers Index has to do with about 800 purchasing managers, which is asking for the standard of the interest rate of business condition now, which has to do with the employment rate, the production rate, the new orders, the prices, the supply deliveries, and the inventories. We are talking about the inventories, we are talking about the manufacturers. So that is why we need to give an attention to this particular news at 9:45 a.m. That same 9:45 a.m., we are able to look at the purchasing price index, which has to do with about 400 purchasing managers who are looking out what the future holds, the future business and the conditions, which includes the employment conditions, the production condition, the new orders, the prices, the suppliers' deliveries, and the inventories. Now, this particular news has to do with the economic health businesses. So that is why we need to give an attention to this particular news. So if the actual is greater than the forecast, that's to say it is good for that particular currency. So 10 a.m. this morning on the same USD, we are able to look at the consumer confidence. This has to do with the survey of over 400 purchasing managers, looking at the conditions of the employment rate, production rate, new orders, prices, and supply deliveries and inventories. This has to do with every sector of the economy. So we can say that this is a leading indicator for economic health business conditions. So if the actual is greater than the forecast, that's to say it is good for that particular currency. This particular news on the USD is known as the CB. It's also known as the consumers. Right, sorry about that. Now, this has also known as the labor price index. Now, this particular news, the reason why we need to give attention to this particular news that is coming up around 7:30 p.m. on Australian dollars, because this is a leading indicator or leading indicator both on the business owners and the consumers' inflations. Now, the statement that is being made on here on our fundamental analysis is that the more business owners pay for labor, the higher the cost they pass to the consumers. That is to tell you that if the laborers, the business owners, pay more or higher wages to the laborers, which is to the workers, that is to say, the prices of their goods and services is going to be higher to the consumers. So that is why we need to give attention to this particular news, which is coming up on 7:30 p.m. on Australian dollar. And we are going to look at the construction has done too that has to do with the industrial aspect of the Australian dollar. So if the actual is weaker than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. So 8:30 p.m., we are going to look at the NZD. We are going to have about 4 high impact news on the NZD, and we are going to look at the official cash rates. We are going to look at the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, talking about the monetary policy statement. We are going to look at the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, talking about the rate statement. And we are going to look out for the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, talking about the press conference. Now, talking about the official cash rate. This particular news has to do with the decision making on the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, which is ROBNZ. Now, this has to do with the interest rate at which bank-led balance held at the Reserve Bank of New Zealand in order for other banks to have either a low interest rate or a high impact rate. That is why they need to consider the official cash rate. And this particular decision is made by the Reserve Bank of New Zealand. The next one we are going to look out for is the monetary policy statement on the New Zealand dollar. Now, we should be careful on this particular news because this particular statement on this monetary policy is an hawkish statement. So it's an indecisive statement. That is why we need to give attention to details when it comes to interpretation of statement. For those of us who joined us on our daily on our online class last week, we are talking about the fundamental analysis, how we can interpret statement. And we say we have different types of statement. We have the hawkish statement and we have the direct statement. So this particular monetary policy is going to be more or less like a discussion with the Reserve Bank of New Zealand. So we should be careful when trading or making a trade decision on that particular news coming up 8 p.m. this evening. 9 p.m. this evening, we are going to look out for the New Zealand dollar, a very high impact news too, talking about the Reserve Bank of New Zealand press conference. This has to do with the announcement of the monetary policy media conference. Now, this announcement is going to be given by the Reserve Bank of New Zealand governor. It's an hawkish statement. Now, it's a decision, it's a discussion being made. Now, so because of this high impact news, they are going to make a discussion on the official cash rate, the monetary policy statement, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand rate statement. Then by 9 p.m., they are going to give a press conference, which is going to give by the Reserve Bank of New Zealand governor through a press conference. Now, giving you an insight and a statement of what they have discussed both on the federal cash rates, monetary policy, and the rate statement. So they are going to give out the what we are going to look out for on this particular factor based on New Zealand dollar. So the press conference is by 9 p.m. So we should take note, it is an hawkish statement. So if it is hawkish than we expected, that is to say it is good for the New Zealand dollar. That's why we need to give attention to this particular news. So that is it for our fundamental analysis. For those of us who are just joining us for our fundamental analysis, don't forget this is brought by you by CJC Markets. My name is Jefta Amati. So let me give an insight of what we should, for those of us who are just joining us now, let me give a highlight of what we have discussed so far. So 12 a.m. this morning, we are able to look at the Japanese yen, which is talking about the Bank of Japan, looking at about the consumer price index of the Bank of Japan. And this particular news has to do with the food and energy of the Japanese yen. So this particular news has to do with the change of price of goods and services purchased by the consumers, excluding food and energy. So if the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. 2 a.m. this morning, we are able to look at the British pounds, which is the BBP, talking about the public sector net borrowing. If the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. And this particular news has to do with the difference between the value, spending, and the income for the public corporations, which has to do with the central bank and the local government during the past few months and the present months we find ourselves in. So that is why we gave an attention to that particular news. 4 a.m. this morning, we are able to look at Euro, a medium impact news talking about the German business climate. If the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. So 5:45 a.m. on British pounds and 6:45 and 6 a.m. this morning British pounds, we are able to look at a low impact news if the actual is greater than the forecast. That is to say it is good for that particular currency. 9 a.m. this morning on Euro, we are able to look at the business confidence at the Euro. This has to do with the market condition and change of sentiment, giving us a signal of what we should look out for the future economy, such as the spending, hiring, and investment on Euro. So this is about the survey of about 3,000 business owners, looking at what they should expect and looking at the market condition for the next 3 months. So that is why we need to give attention to this particular news. Like I said, low impact news are not always low impact news. They move the market to a certain extent in terms of volatility. So we are able to look at that. USD dollar low at 9 a.m. this morning. We are able to look at the USD dollar. And if the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. At 9:45 a.m. this morning, we are able to look at the medium impact news talking about the flash manufacturing, which is about the purchasing managers index. This particular has to do with the survey of about 400 purchasing managers, which hope to look about the correspondence about the business conditions, including the employment condition, the production condition, the new order condition, the prices, the suppliers, deliveries, and inventory. So we are talking about the inventories, we're talking about the producers, we're talking about the manufacturers. So that is it for 9:45 a.m. on USD. That same 9:45 a.m. we look at the flash services, which is also known as the purchasing managers index. So if the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. 10 a.m. this morning, we are going to look at the USD, talking about the consumer confidence. If the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. And the low impact news we have on USD2 on that same 10 a.m. this morning, we are going to look about the Richmond Manufacturing Index, which has to do with the production managers index. So if the actual is greater than the forecast, for the particular currency. We have the next news we have is a non-economic news, which has to do with the Japanese yen JPY. We have a bank holiday on the Japanese yen. 7:30 p.m. we are going to look at the wages price index, which has to do with the laborers. Look at the wages of the workers, both the government workers and the private workers, to see if they can increase or decrease their wages, which is their salaries. We are going to look at which has to do with the Australian dollar, and that same 30 p.m. we have to look at another low impact news on based on the construction work done. If the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. 8:30 p.m. there will be a discussion between the cabinet and the Reserve Bank of New Zealand. Now, there will be a discussion on both the official cash rate, the monetary policy, and the rate statement. Now, there will be a discussion around these different sectors, both the cabinet and the Reserve Bank of New Zealand governor. Now, 9 p.m. today, we are going to have a press conference from the Reserve Bank of New Zealand governor, giving us an insight what you should hope for, what you should expect based on their discussion, giving us an insight using the press conference so that we can know and see what we can expect in terms of volatility and providing liquidity in the Forex market based on the official price rate, the monetary policy on New Zealand dollar, and the rate statement. So 9 p.m. today, we are going to get the press conference. We should take note. If it's an awkward statement, it is more awkward than we expected. That is to say, it is good for that particular currency. For those of us who would like to know how to interpret fundamental analysis, please hook up to our classes later this week. For those of us who are joining us, hook up to our classes, whether online or offline classes around Nigeria, be it at Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Asaba, Imo State, and Bayelsa. Hook up to there and see how you can learn how to interpret this news. So this is what our fundamental analysis has for us for today. So it's beautiful to have you guys today for joining us on our daily analysis. Don't forget, this is brought by you by CJC Market, and my name still remains Jefta Amadi. So let's quickly rush down to our technical analysis to see what the market has for us for today. Yesterday was a very hectic day for traders. The market was going sideways. That is why most of the traders were able to take out trades yesterday. So for those of us who just join us, you're welcome to our daily analysis. Let me share my screen now. My Forex charts. Right. Okay. If you can see my screen, my Forex chart, please type yes to the comment section. If you can see my screen clearly, please type yes to the comment section to be sure that you are following up. You can see my screen. Type yes to the comment section. All right, thank you, Tony, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. So let's quickly move on. Let's go to Euro USD. Wow. Let's go to our daily time frame. Let's go to our daily time frame. All right. Okay, like we said, for us to be able to our new high, for us to be able to analyze our technical analysis to a professional standard, we said first of all identify our trend. Currently now, the market on Euro USD on daily analysis is on a bearish trend. As we said, when markets on a bearish trend, it tends to give us what? A lower highs and a lower lows. So we have been able to identify our trend, which is a bearish trend. Now let's quickly identify our supply and demand zone, which is our support and resistance zones, so that our chart makes sense to us. This is our number one supply and demand. Okay, that one here, and let's put another one here because there is a rejection here. And let's put the last one below. Right, right. Now, the market now is on a consolidation zone. The market now is on a consolidation zone. That is why market is slowing down here. It's serving as a resistance to the sellers and serving as a support to the buyers. Now, if you look closely, markets, this is where the peak happens, the impulse price movement happens, and it gets to this particular point in price. But due to the rejection on here, price wasn't able to to break this particular resistance, which is heading down to here. Like we analyzed this market last week for those of us who joined us. We said two things are involved when we analyzed this market last week. For those of us who joined us in our daily analysis, we said two things are involved. Either the market gets to this particular point in price because there is a strong market building order here. Like when market is approaching that point in price, market tends to slow down. So due to the market building order here, that was what led to the slowdown of price on here. So that is why price wasn't able to break that particular resistance, which is here, to serve as a support. Now, like we said, if the market is giving the buyers a support at this particular point in price, that is to say the market is heading to the next resistance zone, which is here, So price was able to get to that particular resistance zone and reject and sold down here. So price have tested here, rejects, tested here for the second time, and also looking as if it's rejecting. So we are expecting two things are involved in this market. It's either markets reject and get upward here, or market gains support, breaks this resistance and heads down here. Now, there's a sensitive point we want to give our attention to. Like if you're a professional technical analyst, we have to give an attention to your impulse price movement, where there is an impulse price very sensitive information there, because that's a place you should expect a reversal point. One of that point is here. Another one is here. Another one is here. So that is why we are able to identify our ranges where we should possibly expect a price rejection, a change of rejection at the particular current trend. So that is it. So When trading our technical analysis, first of all, identify our trend, then look at our supply and demand zone, and being sensitive to our chart is by looking out for where there is an impulse price rejection, either bullish or bearish. So at this particular point in price, we are expecting two things. Two things are important. Either markets gain support here and head up here, or break this resistance and head up here. Rejection must surely take place because there is an impulse price movement here that will let price push down here. Or the market will break this resistance zone and head down here to clear up stops. Move the market upward here and gain another support. If the market is moving in a bearish direction, it will head down here and break resistance. Like I said, if the market is on a bearish direction on your Forex chart, market tends to give you the lower highs and the lower lows. So that is what you should be expecting for Euro. So if you are a smart trader, what you have to do is to go to a lower time frame and look for a entry point. Let's head down to a lower time frame. Let's go to 4 hours time frame and see what we can find. Now, conditions of time frame is that market is overview. Meanwhile, the lower So this is our 1 hour time frame on Euro USD. So right now the market is buying on Euro USD. I think this is a fundamental movement. I think the fundamental movement is affecting the market. But at the same time, there is a resistance here. There is a resistance here, which we have already mapped out, putting our resistance. Like that is why the price is rejecting. This is a live chart. That is why the price is rejecting at this particular point in price. So at this particular point, you allow what the fundamentals is. If the market breaks this particular resistance, know that it is heading to the next resistance zone. But for now, we can say that the buyers owns the market. The buyers owns the market. But take note, the market is on a resistance zone. So you should be careful when using a execution point. So that is it for Euro USD. So let's quickly go to, let's move to NZD JPY. NZD JPY. Let's see what the market has for us for today. Oh, okay, nice. The market now is currently on the bias movement for it is a bearish movement. We have been able to identify our trend. Then we should map out our supply and demand zone. This is one. This have another one here. We have another one here. We have another one below. Right. Then let's be sensitive to our charts. Let's be sensitive to our chart by mapping out our impulse price movement, where we should expect a rejection or a reversal point. Here is one, and here is another. Here is quite a big zone. Like I said, mapping out your zone is not important at that particular moment, but it gives you an insight where there will likely be a reversal point. Sorry, this is 1 hour time frame. Let's go to daily time frame. It gives you an insight what you should expect in the market, where there should be an impulse price rejection or a change of trend, or there will be a slowdown in movement when it comes to volatility in the market. So we have been able to identify our support and resistance zone. The market is currently now on a bearish direction. So the market was able to reject at this particular point in price that led to the movement of price here, reject to this particular point in price that led to the movement here. So the market is currently now, due to the consolidation on here and the rejection on here, the market is on a buying movement, but it's heading towards a impulse price movement rejection zone. So we are expecting price to slow down at this particular point in time. So we should look at what our market condition is going to give us based on our trading decision on our candlestick formations. If you see a inverted hammer candlestick, you should know what the market is ought to do and giving you an insight what the market you should expect the next movement of the market. If you are seeing a hammer candle, a shooting star, a triple soldier candlestick pattern, you should know that the market is really heading to a particular direction. For those of us who are conversant, who have joined our candlestick chart pattern classes. So this is what we should hold for NZD-JPY. If you're a smart trader, you go into a lower time frame and look for an entry point. So let's quickly move on because there are so many news you should expect for today. Let's move lastly to gold. Gold, and see what gold is saying. Wow. has given us a new high. Gold has given us a new high. As we are speculating that gold rejects at that particular point that sold massively, but it was just a fake out. So it sold massively about a full day. Gold was selling for more than 4 hours, 6 hours to 4 hours. Gold was selling massively, but it was just a pullback, trying to gain support for a buy. So at this particular point, gold is on. Let me zoom out so that you can see the chart clearly. Gold has cleared up stops here. Gold has been able to clear up stops here, heading to this next resistance zone. Like we said, the market was able to move in this direction, reject because of the resistance here. Market was able to sell down here for a full day. Now heading down here, it gained support. That's what led to gold is bullish movement, heading to clear out stops at the next resistance zone, which is on here. So at this particular point in price, we should expect price to slow down because gold has gotten to its highest resistance zone on our recent charts. So we are expecting price to slow down, probably reject, pull down a little bit. For gold to continue its movements, two things are involved. Either the market rejects at this particular point in price, rejects at the particular point in price and move downward here. If it is a bullish direction, gold move, it rejects and move downward here and gain support and will continue its upward movement. Or gold from this particular point in price and continue its upward movement. Or it will get to here and either break down, heading down to clear all stops here in order to gain more liquidity. So now when you are trading gold, you have to be smart. For those of us who are trading gold, what we should look at for gold is going to get is at the tip now at a resistance zone to clear off stops. Now, two things are involved: either market to slow down and get to here, gain support and continue its upward movement, or market will slow down here, get to this particular here, slow down also here because of this resistance zone here, and break this resistance zone and head down to clear or stop, gain support at the particular point in price, because here is a very sensitive point here and here, because there is an impulse price movement. Series of rejections happens here, so we should expect price to reject at this particular point in price. So that is it for gold. So let's quickly round off for those of us who are going on here to trade on our trading chart. Let's quickly round off for those of us who are trading gold. You should go on your lower time frame and seek out for an entering point. Let's go to a lower time frame. Let's look at 4 hours time frame and see what the market has for us. Let's look at 4 hours time frame and see what the market has for us. So the market is buying massively. It's a fact that's gotten to its resistance zone, and market on 4 hours time frame, market is rejecting, creating a sell candle. Then on 1 hour time frame, let's see what the market is holding for us. Okay, 1 hour time frame, the market is also creating a sell candle, but the market is currently consolidating on a 1 hour time frame. So at this particular point in price, as a smart trader, you are ought to do nothing until market gives you a structure, until market gives you a formulation, until market gives you a condition for you to base your trading decision on. So you are expected to do nothing at the particular point in price. So thank you very much. Don't forget, this is brought by you by CJC Markets. We are quickly rounding up for those of us who are trading the fundamental analysis so that we can see how we can trade and in order to provide liquidity and make profit from each on every trade you execute. Remember the rules of trading: do not chase price, not trace price. There is always an opportunity in the forex market. It is not on 1 hour time frame, it's on daily time frame for those of us who are trading intraday trade, and it's those of us who are scalping on a lower time frame, and use these market conditions we have just discussed on our daily analysis to execute and base your trading decision based on your market structure and market foundations. So don't forget, this is brought by you by CJC Markets. I remain Chester Amadi. So join us tomorrow as we analyze and give insights of what you should hold or what you should see in the forex market, both in the fundamental analysis and the technical analysis. For you to get these particular recordings on this particular program this morning, please contact anyone that invited you in on this program this morning so that you'll be able to get the recordings of these daily analysis and the previous ones too. For our weekly analysis, for those of us who need to look out for our weekly analysis and see what the market holds for us for the week, you can see, send a message across to whoever invited you in this program so that they'll be able to send you across recordings. Thank you very much. See you next time and have a wonderful trading day and a beautiful trading day. Thank you.